Cow de Varza by David No. Chapter 2, Next Move. Elise stared up at the ceiling of her modest habitation module, tired yet unable to sleep. The so-called relaxation music the station provided wasn't helping. Piano notes sounded harsh instead of soothing. The drums were too loud. Even the gentle chimes rung out just a little too long. It wasn't a mystery to her either. Her conversation with Gierre had let loose some deep-rooted irritation that she hadn't been aware of before. She kicked off the covers and stretched out before slamming her arms back down into the mattress. Something in the dark registered her discomfort and set a gentle breeze blowing through the room. "Didn't come all this way for a tech job," she grumbled in Paradisian. No guarantees you were going to find work as a journo either, though. Damn it, Elise! You can't survive on a dream alone. She rolled off the bed, a dim light barely illuminating the room as she stood to full height. "Music off," she ordered, walking over to the food processor. A few button taps later, a cup of water appeared behind the transparent hatch. It was refreshingly cool to the touch. She took a few seconds to press the chilled container against her forehead before downing the liquid in a few gulps and requesting another. She leaned against the machine, her eyes coming to rest on the large screen on the opposite wall. During the station's day cycle, it would show various vistas from around the system. When Elise looked at it now, however, all she could see was a dimmed starscape. "Display map." She lowered herself onto the sofa and took a swig of her drink. The screen faded up, bringing with it a crude two-dimensional view of the Winden system. A smiling cartoon face appeared in the bottom left, offering assistance should it be required. Elise flicked him away with a hand gesture and studied the image. "2 habitable planets," she read, "Winden Prime and Exis. Modest populations. 1 public station. Cow de Varza." She sighed heavily. "Zoom out," she ordered. Her voice cracked. It took a couple of seconds for the view to escape Winden. As it continued, Exin, Heradim, and Kandaha appeared at the edge. Stop! Heradim and Kandaha were systems in the Arabia sphere of influence. Elise had neither the credentials nor the desire to settle in that region. Her gaze swept to the other system. Exin. Her eyes narrowed. The system of Exin was less populated than Winden, had fewer habitable planets, only a handful of research stations, and, if the warnings on the map were correct, was not a place many came back from, likely due to its proximity to the void cloud. Exin attracted a lot of voiders, people who thought they could breach or navigate around the anomaly. Nobody had been successful, yet they kept coming. Zoom out. 2 more systems appeared on the border, Gatelin and Arokia. Stop. Focus zoom on region. She squinted, trying to read the digits on the screen. 6, 4, 2. Stop. Display information for Gatelin. Read. Gatelin. The vid system's flat synthesized voice stated. 6 planets. Gatelin 1. Gatelin 2. Iskoda. Moderate population. Melanics. Medium population. Gatelin 5. Gatelin 6. Large research facilities at polar regions. Several moons in this system are also populated. Gatelin has 1 public station, Kiseladok. Records indicate a recent conflict on the surface of Melanics. Caution is advised within this region. Additional information can be accessed via the WinNet. Elise finished her drink and sat with the cup against her lips, not quite staring at the information. Before long, her eyelids grew heavy, and she passed into a deep slumber. "Hey, wake up!" Joseph Raffa lazily opened an eye to see his aide leaning over him. He opened the other and glanced around. He was seated on the back of a personal transport vehicle, which waited at the entrance to the station's administrative core. He remembered why he'd been summoned and let out a heavy sigh. Something beeped ahead of them, and the PTV rolled forward. Icarus Brooke occupied the seat beside him, flicking through a datapad full of information that Raffa dared not attempt to understand. The screen automatically adjusted as they entered the shadowy tunnels under Admin Core. Any additional info? Icarus shook his head. Regretfully, no. Arch-Commissioner Nevos is only willing to discuss the issue in person. That can't be good. Any idea why he wants me specifically? ComCap Tech is leading the mission to Gateland. ComCap Rexon is on leave. You are the only one available. Raffa grinned. You sure know how to make a guy feel special. The PTV stopped parallel to a large set of double doors. A security officer poked his head out of a hastily erected booth, realized who it was, and granted them entry. Raffa had barely left his seat when the vehicle sped away. He frowned. People seem tense. With that in mind, you should make haste. Raffa nodded. Perhaps I should. See you soon. Arch-Commissioner Gierre Nevos looked up as Raffa stepped into the Admin Core Control Center, or, as it was more commonly known, Command Core. Nevos said something to Kaska as she poked at the console, then turned to Raffa with a frown. ComCap Raffa. Raffa raised his right hand in salute. Is there a problem, sir? Unfortunately, no. He shook his head and waved off Raffa's formalities. Ease. He visibly loosened up, but his face still held a look of worry. Yestercycle, Specialist Trast observed a vessel, some kind of freighter, making its way towards Kau de Varza. Direct course. Okay, Raffa thought. Nothing unusual so far. It isn't responding to communication. We've seen no distress beacons, and at their current rate, they'll be here in under half an MSEC. There it is. I'll take it we've already tried to move out of its path. Gierre nodded solemnly. It adjusts course once it detects what we're doing. That's not good. So what are my orders? We need you to intercept the vessel, board it, and resolve the situation. We have no problem if they want to dock here, but as we are unable to determine their intentions, we need to prevent them from getting in range until we can be sure they aren't a threat. Akonda or Vipka? Boa. Raffa tilted his head. I must have misheard you. You misheard nothing. The engineers are working to upgrade Boa's defense capability. What defense capability? It's got a shield. That's it. If I may, Arch-Commissioner, Kaska said, turning from the console. Gierre nodded, seemingly relieved. Of course. Raffa eyed her cautiously as she approached, clutching a datapad in her hands. I understand your concern, Stone said. Boa isn't built for this sort of mission, but it is able. It's a transport. And we're asking you to transport people. Into the proximity of an unresponsive vessel, which may or may not fire upon us? If they do, Gierre replied, we'll know what their intentions are, and have the right to shoot them down with the station's defenses. And what about the people on Boa? Kaska glanced at him. Shields should hold against whatever they've got. Should? Specialist Stone, with respect. I'm not leading people to their deaths because something should hold, but doesn't. Gierre spoke with a cool confidence. Need I remind you that failure to act could lead to the destruction of the station? Hey, if they get within firing range and still don't respond, we have every right to defend ourselves. And what if it's refugees? What if they're people in need? Then they should be doing everything in their power to telegraph their intentions. Even a flash from the emergency beacon would let us know they are in trouble. Instead, nothing. Stone nodded. ComCap Raffa's assessment is correct. However, we can't know what condition their emergency beacon is in. we can make a damn good guess. It's probably fine. They just have bad intentions, and you're sending, I take it, our only active bird out to meet them. Just blast it when it's in range. Disable, don't kill. Then we can pull it in and flood it with security. Stone shook her head. We've run the simulations. Disabling the ship provides a greater than 82% chance that it, or the debris, will damage the station beyond our current repair ability. Destroying it outright would reduce the risk, but we don't want it to come to that. Gierre stepped forward. We also don't want to alert the citizens to what's happening. Raffa punched his hand and pointed at Stone. So let me get this straight. You want me to take a transport vessel out to meet a potentially hostile ship, hope they don't shoot us, board it, and provide aid if necessary. If they're hostile, you want us to turn them away. If they refuse, we're supposed to get rid of them. And if anything happens to Bois, that gives you the justification to use the station's guns. Gierre and Stone both nodded. I want it on record that I think this is a dumb plan. His shoulders slumped, but I get the feeling you won't take no for an answer. Comcap Raffa, we cannot take no for an answer. He straightened and saluted again. With your permission, I will put this operation into effect. Go ahead. Gierre turned to face Stone and glanced back over his shoulder as he continued. Oh, and Joseph, I hope I don't need to remind you that this incident is of the utmost secrecy. The citizens will not find out unless the unthinkable happens, and I need to order an evacuation. Is that clear? Like trans steel. Good. If you have nothing to add, Specialist Stone. I do not. Then please, Comcap, do not let me keep you. Gierre and Kaska glanced at one another as the door sealed behind Raffa. Your assessment? Stone considered her answer for a moment. Comcap Raffa is capable, but only when properly equipped. His concerns about Bois are well-founded. Once this is dealt with, I want a full audit and inspection of the workshop. Stone's eyes widened, and a smile crept to her lips. Sir, I would appreciate the privilege. Gierre eyed her with uncertainty. You have some ideas on how to improve the situation? I have some idea of who the problem is. Is this a personal vendetta, Specialist Stone, or a legitimate concern? A legitimate concern that has developed into a personal vendetta. The lead engineer is incapable, and through his failings, Kau Devarza, my home, is now at risk. A fair statement, and I appreciate your honesty. You will get your wish. However, I request that you undertake this operation with an aide. Kaska closed her eyes just long enough for Gierre not to notice her irritation. Did you have anyone in mind, sir? Which aides will be available? Kaska tapped at the pad and flicked through a couple of directories. Aide Tannen is still undergoing treatment for ice bug. Aide Yata has been sent to the surface as per our recruitment agreement, and everyone else is assigned to captains, commissioners, or executives. There was a hint of spite on that last word. We'll requisition someone after we've dealt with this situation. That will not be a problem. He nodded. Very well, Specialist Stone. Let us return our attention to the problem at hand. Please inform me if there are any changes. She saluted, then returned back to her console. Icarus could tell from the look on Raffa's face that the meeting hadn't gone well. What are our orders? He asked, eager to get to work. Send a bunch of good old folk to die when there are better alternatives. Icarus blinked. Perhaps you should elaborate. Raffa shook his head and whistled down the tunnel. In the distance, a PTV started up and rolled towards them. I'll fill you in on the way. Before the vehicle could roll on, a broad-shouldered man bundled into the seat beside the driver and turned to look at Raffa and Icarus.
Gentlemen.
Both men turned and raised their hands in salute. Commissioner Zealand.
I hear the G-Man has given you a mission.
Yes, sir, Raffa replied. Classified.
Don't worry, ComCap. I'm not here to turn you out.
He sighed and tapped the driver on the shoulder, pointing forward. The PTV started to hum, then rolled on.
You boys are in for a hell of a job. G-Man's right to suggest we investigate. Gotta figure out if innocent parties are involved. But Boa isn't up to it.
I'm hoping this is the part where you'll tell us you've got a ship hidden away somewhere.
I wish.
He sighed.
Truth is, it's all we got right now. And it doesn't matter what weapon they glue on, your odds don't get much better.
If you don't mind me asking, what was your recommendation to the Arch-Commissioner? He didn't hesitate.
Destroy it.
But,
listen, the people of this station expect a publicly strong defense commissioner. When the Office of Public Relations reveals our meeting, people won't want to see me sitting in a passive trance suggesting we should take it on the nose. They'll want someone to voice their anger. This is a threat to our homes. How dare they? And then for all my shouting, G-Man will be seen to pick the balanced route. Calmer heads will prevail. And the people of this station will feel protected. Just business as usual.
He pointed to the ceiling, a transparent window out to the system.
We'll have to do it for all of them, too.
Sir?
If one of those nutcase cults or war-hungry factions from the surface sees that the defense commissioner is overly aggressive, they might think twice. It's the reason our security force is so large.
Won't they see that the Arch-Commissioner chooses an alternative?
Another bluff. I am not bluffing. If the station really does come under attack from hostiles, we don't need to worry about innocence. The alternative will not prevail that cycle, and it will shock them.
Raffa shook his head. Politics are too confusing for me.
Managing a ship full of people? That sounds like politics enough for me. All I have to do is stomp around saying stuff like, blow it up, and my commitment is fulfilled.
Icarus took a deep breath. It's not often we get to enjoy your company, Commissioner Zealand. I sense this conversation has another purpose.
Astute observation, Icarus, as always.
He grunted.
Don't take a full squad.
Raffa scoffed. Sorry?
Listen, if you run into any trouble, Boa won't hold up. Throwing away security personnel is not part of your mission.
With respect, sir, my mission will be difficult enough without reduced manpower.
This isn't one of your training missions, Raffa. If you encounter even the slightest resistance, your journey won't get you a second chance.
I'm fully aware of that, but...
ComCap Raffa, what you are doing, honorable as it may be, only has two possible conclusions. Peace or hostility. I must have the resources available should it be the latter.
Hostility is more likely, Icarus replied. Should we appear weak?
We are sending a transport to do the job of a warship. We already appear weak.
The PTV jolted to a stop outside a group of unremarkable office-like buildings. A heavily armored door and two security personnel standing guard were the only things that made them stand out as different to most other constructions on the station. Icarus jumped up, scanned the area, and nodded in all clear. Raffa stepped off the rear bench and turned to face Commissioner Zealand. I'll speak to my advisors and take your recommendation into consideration, sir.
See that you do. I'd rather end your record with honors, not anger.
He got the driver's attention and spun a raised finger, indicating that he was to turn around. Raffa raised his hand in salute and watched as the PTV took off around the corner. I find my curiosity aroused, Icarus said as they approached the door. The two guards offered the pair a crisper salute than Raffa had given Zealand. He nodded to them. Report! Force Commander Winters arrived 0.5 kilosec ago, the senior officer replied. He seemed in good spirits. Raffa tried to hide his exasperation. Yeah, we'll see how long that lasts. Anything else? No, sir. Very well, continue. The junior guard turned to a panel beside the door and pressed his face against it. After a series of clicks, the heavy metal aperture split in two, and the halves disappeared into the thick walls. Raffa nodded his thanks and stepped through with Icarus close behind. A series of defense-filled corridors led them to the command suite, a circular room, nearly obsolete consoles, and their operators situated around the curved inner wall. Raffa approached the large datascape table at the center and nodded to the armored figure on the other side. Winters?
Cap.
All right, we haven't got much time, so let's get down to it. He motioned for Icarus and Winters to gather closer together. They offered one another subtle nods, then focused on Raffa. He tapped the datascape and brought up a top-down, simplified view of the system. The view zoomed in on the space surrounding Exis. Raffa adjusted it once more to show Kaudevar's station and the incoming ship. Commander Corps' specialists recently spotted a freighter on a direct course with the station. They are unresponsive to communications, and no emergency beacon or other such signal has been observed. When Command Corps attempted to move the station, the ship automatically corrected its course. The maneuver was repeated, and the freighter changed course again. We've been given the unenviable task of taking Boa to intercept the freighter, determine their intentions, and either assist them or turn them back.
Boa?
Winters grimaced.
For an intercept mission?
I know. Vipka would have been my first choice, but it's out of action.
What about Cobra?
On the Gatland mission with Comcap Tech.
What does he need a stealth vessel for?
Winters' voice had a sharp edge to it. That mission is confidential, and we've got our own problems to worry about. Sir, Icarus had been studying the datascape. What do we do about the freighter? Raffa gave the simplified logo a tap. The view zoomed to the incoming ship. Icarus couldn't stop himself from letting out a disappointed sigh as the Spartan list of details appeared. Well, Raffa said, we know how big it is, at least. Winters shook his head.
That doesn't help. We need to know what weapons we're coming up against, what sort of numbers we're facing. If we get close to them in Boa and they open fire,
he frowned.
I guess we'll know their intentions then, but I don't fancy our chances.
Me either. So we need to come up with something that maximizes our chances, but still protects the station. Icarus looked at Raffa. In a best-case scenario, it's a problem with the ship. You can board, regain control, bring it in safely.
And worst case?
Winters asked. Worst case? They destroy Boa on approach and continue on until they either board or destroy Kaudevarza. We can't accept that, Raffa replied. If the freighters got weapons, what are they likely to be? Where are they likely to be positioned? And how can we get around them? Icarus rubbed his chin. From what we know of the freighters that visit the station, weapons are short-range, concentrated along the sides with a focus on cargo hatches.
That's a limitation,
Winters remarked.
We can approach low, swing under them, backflip onto the underside, and breach a mech corridor. The only risk is long-range or front-facing weapons.
Backflip onto the underside? Raffa replied, his face twisted in confusion. Maybe Vipka, but Boa can't perform a maneuver like that, especially not against a moving target. Winters shrugged.
Best I've got.
The Comcap is correct. Icarus pointed to the icon for the freighter. You need to approach alongside, match speeds, and dock. Boa's hull can't cope with high-stress maneuvers, so that will be your only option. They're sticking a weapon on Boa. Won't be much, but maybe. Raffa's eyes narrowed as he read back through the datascape. What if, come in low, avoid the defenses, pick off the gun on one hatch, circle back around as many times as we have to, then dock? Time will be a factor, and this plan relies on the opposing vessel having lax front and rear defense. Winters cleared his throat.
Why can't we circle back round, match speeds, then dock with the mech hatch? Maybe a backflip is too much, but a simple rotation might do the trick.
Raffa tapped the display. An input window appeared. Run simulation. Vessel 1, Boa. Vessel 2, unidentified freighter. Acquire live information from current data feed. The view zoomed out once more, giving them a top-down scene. An icon representing Boa appeared over Caudavarza. Another, the freighter, in the distance. Winters, please input your suggestion. Winters rolled his eyes, exhaled, then leaned over the datascape with a disinterested frown.
You know I hate these things.
I haven't got the time, spare ships, or people for you to run a real-life sim. This is the best you're gonna get until the run. Talking of people, Icarus said in a way that made Raffa's shoulders jump. An unreasonable request on Zealand's part. Raffa replied, a faintly masked irritation in his voice. He commands 4 main security teams, 2 support teams, and we can call on 2 volunteer squads. Yet he asks me to break up my squad to leave some here. We need those troops. The request was to not take a full squad. May I suggest that to appease Commander Zealand, you take the majority of both squads, but leave the least experienced, wounded, or otherwise unable units to defend the station. This way, your commitment is fulfilled, however dubiously, and you still maintain a reasonable size force. How many people can fit on Boa? With equipment? Icarus glanced at his datapad. 200, not including crew. Well, that makes my job easier. It didn't take Raffa long to do the maths. Remove 50 people from both squads, station them here, load the rest onto Boa. He glanced over to Winters, who was still trying to navigate the datascape's menu. I need you to get me a list of the 100 staying. Once we're done here, I want the rest prepared and running exercises until the ship is ready.
Won't take long to come up with that list,
Winters replied flippantly.
Been thinking about making some cutbacks. Use the funds to better train the ones who actually know what security means.
Raffa shot him a look. That will need some discussion upon the completion of this mission.
Oh, I know.
He stood up straight and motioned to the datascape.
There, it's ready.
Run it. The trio watched, tense, as the simulation played out in front of them at 25 times speed. Boa raced away from Caudavarza, the icon getting gradually smaller to represent it going low compared to the freighter. The 2 ships passed, Boa out of range of any potential weapons fire. The icon then rapidly grew in size as it arced upwards, then shrunk once more as it dipped and dove on the freighter. Raffa sucked through his teeth at the drastic stunts, but according to the readings, Boa held together. The 2 icons eventually overlapped as Boa arrived under the freighter and latched on. The simulation proudly declared itself completed. I don't like that rear approach, Raffa said flatly.
Why not?
Winters replied, irritated that his simulation hadn't impressed Raffa. The first approach needs to look for rear-facing weapons. If the crew can pull this off, I don't want them blasted on the final approach.
So, the first pass should be a firing run?
Raffa nodded. Only if we see weapons. No need to damage it if there's nothing there. The visual scanners will see what the freighter has from some distance. You'll be able to make a decision early, Icarus said. Once that's done, Raffa turned back to the datascape. We breached the mech corridor, then spread out in opposite directions, with a focus on the command center. Winters nodded. The sweep will be the easy bit. A layout would be nice, but with 200 soldiers on a ship that size, shouldn't take too long to clear and map out. Once we're in control, we bring it into the dock? That's the plan. They watched the updated simulation, and while the result wasn't perfect, it was better than losing the station. Raffa took a deep breath as the completed notification appeared. I really hope they don't fire on us. Is it wrong to hope for a ship full of civilians who couldn't keep life support running? Icarus thought about it for a few seconds, then nodded. Wrong? Yes, but it would mean your entry aboard will be unopposed, swift, and execution of the operation will be successful. Thus, more lives would be saved in the grander scheme. Winters stepped around the table, closer to the edge with the freighter. Do we know where they came from? He asked, eyes narrowing on the neighboring systems. I'd like to know who we're potentially up against. Command Corps are probably looking into it, but best guess would be Exon, Hal, Clion, or Grinda. Icarus shook his head. Grinda and Clion are practically empty. There's no way they'd have the capability. If whoever this is came from either of those, it wasn't their point of origin. Exon and Hall aren't into losing ships either, Winters added. Raffa sighed. Truth is, we don't know. So, assume the worst. Aw, damn it. Winters' eyes glazed over as he whispered, what if it's Beyima? Reclaimers. Icarus frowned. If that's the case, Kaudavarza is in for a difficult time. The silence lingered just a few seconds too long before Raffa tried to calm everyone. We can theorize all we like once this is over. Might be we find some clues while we're on board. He stood straight and looked to his aide and force commander. Are there any questions? They shook their heads. All right then. Winters, put those teams together and get them prepped. Icarus, I need you to find out how long it's going to take the engineers to get Boa lifting. Icarus nodded while Winters gave a stiff salute. Raffa returned the salute and watched as they disappeared into the corridor. After several seconds, he turned back to the display, his eyes slowly wandering over the simulation before him.